All right, good morning. I'm going to call this meeting of the Mayor and Council work session to order, and we're going to get right to work. First up, under governing body, is the mayoral reappointment of Nancy Stoltz Jeffers to the Cemetery Commission for a term that begins on 6/1/2022 and ends on 6/30/2025. I will make that consent number one, if there is no objection to that, which really there shouldn't be. Okay, A2, the adoption of a new schedule of fees for city cemeteries. So first up this morning is City Clerk Alyssa Doyle. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I have before you an approval. I'm requesting for you all to adopt a new fee schedule for the city cemeteries. And if you turn to page 2, you'll actually see that schedule. And this will be effective August the 1st. The single plots at both cemeteries will be $500, and the city permit will be $100. There is a grave marker they can order from us. I actually order it from a company out town, but that's optional. But if you'll turn to the cover sheet on the top, I won't read all of it, but if you'll go to the second paragraph, the current price of purchasing a grave plot at Hillcrest is currently $500. We have 2 plots available, and after that it will be sold out. Garden Rest is at $300, so my request to you is to raise that from $300 to $500, and your cover sheet's got 40 plots available, but that's down to 37. The old Villerica Cemetery, that's actually closed for plot purchase and burials. That $25, reason why I want to raise that $25 to $100, it's been around since 2009. It was adopted with an amended cemetery ordinance. That amendment required funeral homes to apply for a permit with the city before grave digging, and we have not raised that price since then. And as you know, the garden club that we got a lot of our income, our revenue from for Hillcrest, they dissolved that club recently and donated the rest of their money to us for the tree project. So that revenue coming from the garden club is gone. So we won't be getting any more of that. So I started taking a look at our fees and what other city cemeteries charge. I did find a range amount of these fees, and that has to do with some of the cities actually do more services than we do, especially if they have a historic cemetery with the state. So my request to you is to increase Garden Rest from $300 to $500 and the closing permit to $25 to $100. And another reason for this, the cost of maintaining these cemeteries has gone up, and it does take quite a good bit of money. We do depend on those grave plot sales, but as you can see, those are decreasing. So I thought at least we can go up from $25 to $100. That's still not a lot, so we're going to be depending on a lot of donations. And if they're large projects, of course, that we'll be asking the city to pay for those. So my recommendation is for you to adopt the new fee schedule. That will be effective August the 1st, 2022.
Okay, Council, does anyone have any questions for Alyssa? All right, Ms. McCoy.
I have a question. You charge them, the family? I'm only asking this because my dad passed away and my mom has to pay like a maintenance fee to the church do you charge any of the families like a nominal maintenance fee every year?
No, we do not. It's just
Okay.
a one-time fee.
Okay.
And our city staff cuts the grass, weed eating. Our friends of the city cemetery volunteers does a lot of the gardening, cleaning tombstones, and
Okay, and so if I'm understanding correctly, the annual maintenance and stuff is done through donations, is paid for.
that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, if there are no additional questions, is there any objection to making this consent number 2?
No
All right,
objection.
no objections. So let's move to A3. This is going to be the development agreement with Villerica Townhomes, Georgia, LLC. Mr. Macklin.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. This is the agreement. It is with Villerica Townhomes, but it's what in my mind I always call the Chapman Homes Agreement. And it is a development agreement whereby the city was going to develop a larger sewage project that is going to serve a larger area than just the development that Chapman Homes is going to build. They've agreed to pay $800,000 towards the construction of the overall project, which would have been their share had they built a sewer project just for their development. And this agreement is setting forth what the terms of our agreement with the city is. The city is actually going to build the sewer improvement using the $800,000 contributed to us from Chapman Homes. This agreement, there is still a couple of points that is not completely finalized yet. The main ones being, one, when we're going to actually start building, and two, what we're going to commit to when we're going to finish building the project. And that is still up in the air as far as the city deciding what we can plug in on those two dates. But other than that, this agreement is finalized. But those are two big points that are not final. And I don't know whether or not the city the council wants to proceed to approve the agreement, leaving the insertion of those two dates to the city staff, or whether you want to wait until we know what those dates are before you vote on it.
Okay, so before I take any questions from council, Tom, do you want to weigh in on that last question about whether or not we want to go ahead and try to approve this from our position?
I like that idea better. Let's approve something that suits us, and then if we get pushback, then we deal with it.
Okay, all right. Is there any council members who have any questions for either David or Tom? Mr. Carter?
So as I understand it, there's only two things missing, two dates are missing off of it?
Yes, when we're going to start and when we're going to finish. And when we're going to finish, they are essentially asking us to finish it by sometime in the middle of 2023. Our position is going to be that if we have to plug in a date, it would be sometime in the middle to later part of 2024, just because of construction delays that seem to be taking place across the country right now.
Okay, this inconsistency between us and them is not going to cause a problem closing out this document if we approve it?
No, I don't think so, because I think our position is that, they may want us to commit to doing it sooner, but we can't because we don't know we just don't know if we could do it. It may be a physical and practical impossibility.
Okay, if you don't see there being a problem with us not agreeing on a closing date, then I won't object to it.
Yeah, I'd like to see us do December 31 of 24 for the completion. And we could set a start date based on their start date.
Okay, anybody else?
Well, I was taking a
Mr.
look at,
Montahan.
sorry, footnote 2, and it talks about makes a reference to the said estimate costs are based upon the agreement of the parties of the estimated flows associated with the proposed project. And then footnote 2 says, what happens if we end up exceeding the estimate? Should we provide more detail in this agreement? So is that, something that we feel comfortable we can address? Because to the extent that there are potentials out here that this agreement isn't fully encompassing as many scenarios we could think of?
Yeah, we have addressed the footnotes that are there already, all
Okay.
except for those closing dates. And the answer to that question on footnote 2 is that the city is if the estimate increases, that's going to be on us.
Okay.
They're paying what they would have paid to build their project.
Okay.
And so if the price increases, it's on us.
Okay.
Okay, anyone else? All right, so hearing no one else, is there any objection to making this consent number 3? All right, no objections. Let's move on to A4. Development agreement with Fuquay Acquisitions 2, Inc. This also is Mr. Mecklin. Go ahead, David.
This is another one of our major ongoing projects, which will be, is kind of the cornerstone of the East Side TAD District, is to enter into an agreement with Fuquay Industries and the purpose of this agreement is to get them started on building the road that will service part of their development. This agreement provides for the city to reimburse Fuquay for the construction of the road that they're going to start. They're not building the whole road, but they are beginning the road that will service their development, and we are going to reimburse them from that out of the proceeds of the bond that comes along with the creation of the TAD. This agreement, again, there are still a couple of points to be resolved on it. The main one of which is that we are inserting a couple of conditions. One is that trying to come up with some language to make them to commit to finishing the development once they begin it, because the city doesn't want to be in the position of agreeing to build the road and to reimburse them for the road if for some reason they end up not building the development that they have committed to us, because there have been commitments that they're going to build a significant and substantial development to justify the creation of the TAD and the building of the road. So that's one point that we are having to deal with. Also, the point on which we are trying to insert a condition that our obligation is conditioned upon the East Side TAD being approved, because if the TAD doesn't go forward, then obviously we're not going to have the money to have paid for constructing a road. So those points are yet unresolved, but I guess I would propose the same thing on this agreement. I would like to revise the motion that's on the cover sheet for this evening, which will set forth an approval that will allow the mayor and staff to agree on those final points about the conditions that will be inserted in the agreement.
Okay, and before I get Tom to weigh in, just like on this, the development before, I want to just say that keep in mind that a lot of these negotiations go on outside of this sort of public setting, and I would ask that we sort of be mindful of that while we talk about this, because it's not finalized. But I think that our position is still going to be that, I actually just asked Tom to do this, but it's similar to the previous position, which is we're going to take the position here. You're going to recommend that we take the position here best for the city, and from there have an opportunity to work on that after this. So let me get you just weigh in on that. Okay, you're good? Okay, any council members have any questions? All right, Mr. Carter.
If we're going to add this as a consent agenda item, I would like to hear the motion. He said the motion needs to be revised. I'd like to hear the motion in its entirety.
What I would propose to do, Mr. Carter, is to, as soon as this is over, when I go back to my office, to rewrite that and to email it to all of you prior to the meeting tonight.
So
Okay.
if after we get that, so at this moment I'll ask for objections on the consent agenda. I'll place it there. However, if the language comes in and there's any reason to object, we'll pull it off.
Fair enough.
Tonight. All right. Anybody else? Is that good, Mr. Carter? All right. Anybody else have any questions?
The
Mr.
question I had didn't really pertain to the agreement, but it was when reviewing the site plan. If I can get it to load here, because I didn't bring my full copy with me. It looked like if you're looking at this project, this is upside down. But if you're looking at try to get this thing to rotate. If you look at the side where the proposed intersection is, and if you look on the Mirror Lake Boulevard side, some of the property lines are set back. It looks to be about 35 feet. And then if you look at the Punkintown side, they're not. And I just didn't know if it was something that we could contemplate asking for the developer to give some sort of additional right-of-way there on the Punkintown Road side, perhaps in the event for these proposed road improvements there that we've discussed.
We've given them the Punkintown plans,
Okay.
so the two should already be working together.
Okay, so they've kind of contemplated already that there might be some negotiation there that may not be part of this agreement, but it's,
Right.
okay. Oh, you told me to get my mic. Is that what you're
Just a
saying?
little closer
I'm
to
sorry.
the mic, yeah.
Sorry about that, yeah. Okay, that was my question. I just didn't know if that was, because, if we're contemplating some improvements there, we may want some additional right-of-way. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, Mr. Carter.
Yeah, it looks like this section of roadway only goes between Pumpkintown and Cleghorn. What about the rest of the roadway?
That's going to be on the city.
Okay.
This development agreement only includes that section of the road.
All right.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, seeing none, are there any objections to making this consent number 4 pending the language that David will send over later?
No
All right.
objection.
Hearing no objection,
We're
Miss,
making it consent, but we don't have the motion that we're gonna look at.
that'll be amended tonight before you actually vote to approve the consent agenda.
Okay.
All right. So let's move on to A5. And this is going to be Ken Denny, the Times Georgian Reader's Choice Award. Ken, if you would come up.
Good morning, Mayor and members of council. This item is just for information.
Is that mic on?
It is, sir. Can you hear me? Thank you.
A little bit better.
Each year, the newspapers of West Georgia conducts a survey, perhaps you're familiar with it, called, of their readers, called the Reader's Choice. The readers are asked to select their favorite merchant, or in this case, public service, and that list of winners is printed in a special section and online. While these selections are not named in advance, winners are usually told so that they can take out advertising in this section. I have been notified that the readers of the Villerican have chosen the City of Villerica as Best Employer, the Mill Amphitheater as Best Live Music Venue, Gold Dust Park as Best Park, and chosen 2 Villerica police officers, Corporal Tommy King and Sergeant Noah Talbert, as their favorite officers. Now, we as a city get a lot of honors from state and professional organizations, but this one comes directly from the people of this city. And for that reason, the staff considers this worth acknowledging. So to thank those residents who selected us, we have chosen to put 2 ads in that special section that will soon be published in the Villerican and on the websites of both the Times Georgian and the Douglas County Sentinel. This half-page ad thanks the readers for naming us as Best Live Venue and Best Employer, and for choosing the 2 officers. We are going to be doing a separate advertisement to acknowledge the recognition of Gold Dust Park. And because the readers recognized both the city as an employer and the police department, we wanted to incorporate an appeal for employees in the ad. So you will notice that the ad incorporates a QR code that will take the newspaper readers directly to documents on our city website for advertising for jobs in the city and with the police department. Also, as part of this advertising campaign, the newspaper is giving us this graphic, Teresa, that we can use. That next item. This little graphic that we can use in our advertising and marketing promotions through the next summer. I wanted to make you aware of this because this promotion by the newspaper is surprisingly well received by the community. I can tell you from my personal experience working at the paper that everyone wants to see which business or enterprise was recognized. So this section will be in high demand when it is published.
Well, I think that's great news. And I can't remember this ever happening before for the city.
I don't either, sir.
Yeah, okay. sometimes when I see these things, I think this is just something new, you know, that hasn't come around, but it seems like this is pretty distinctive for us. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Is there any council members have any comments or questions? Ms. McPherson?
Sorry,
She waved. She waved.
I got my hand up first.
Go ahead.
I find it interesting, you know, I hadn't thought about this prior to today, but lest anyone think any of this is fixed, because large employers a lot of time can get a lot of votes, right? Whether it's a school district or hospital system or whatever it might be. But a good amount of our employees do not live in the city limits. And I didn't participate. I don't know. I must have missed it. I don't know. So I found it rather interesting in that respect.
All right, Mr. Carter.
Has this been an ongoing thing over a period of time?
Oh,
We
yes,
just
sir.
now got involved in it?
The-
How long has it been going
the
on?
Reader's
'Cause I
Choice,
hadn't seen it before
I'm
either.
not sure how long the Reader's Choice campaign has been going on, but it's been since I've been associated with the paper, so that goes back to 2013. So
Okay.
This is the same type of thing that I see hanging on some businesses
That is
from
correct.
time to time, right?
Mhm.
And I think the Montana Law Firm had one hanging not too long ago,
that is
if I
correct.
remember correctly.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else have any questions or any comments? All right, well, thank you, Ken, for presenting that. This is your first time up presenting, isn't
The
it?
first time with you in the chair, sir.
Oh, somebody else was here. I got you. All right, well, lucky you. Thank you. All right, let's move on to tab B, Community Development. ALP 2-2022, alcohol license permit application for Divine City Inc., doing business as Carroll Road Shopette. Ms. Nairee, come on up.
Good morning, Mayor and council
morning.
members.
Morning.
Okay. You want me to start?
Oh, absolutely, go ahead.
Okay. Well, we're here. The purpose is for Divine City Inc., doing business as Carroll Road Shopette. It's a change of ownership, and it's just presented application to offer, as customary, retail sales of packaged beer and wine at the address of 205 South Carroll Road. They have Divine City Inc., DBA Carroll Road Shopette, has met the qualifications, so they have received their occupational tax permit. They've registered with the state of Georgia's alcohol division to receive their state license for alcohol, and they're just coming before us again to receive our local alcohol permit due to a recent change of ownership.
Yeah, that was about to be my question. It
Mm-hmm.
seems like this particular business comes before us on a regular basis.
Pretty
So
often.
this is a new ownership or
It
new
is.
manager?
It's new owners. They have the document. It could be related or what have you, but they did present the document, new information to show that they are new
That
owners.
they are new owners.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes.
All right, Ms. McPherson.
Did you get my message as far as what ward this is in? I believe it was listed as Ward 1,
Hold on, let me see.
Ward 2. Yeah, I left a voicemail.
I see Ward 1 is what was listed.
Yeah, let's check on that because
Okay.
that would be one building out of an entire section that's not Ward 3. It has to be Ward
Okay.
3. But just if you'll check on that. The only other thing, it's a new owner. Are they here? Or?
They're not. They were told that they would need to come tonight, possibly.
Okay, so they may be here
Oh,
this.
this item has a public hearing, right?
Yeah.
That needs to be listed on whoever sends it over to the ladies,
Mm-hmm.
the clerk. It needs to show on here that there's a public hearing. That's not just for me.
Okay.
That's for the public
okay.
to know that this item will have a public
Public hearing. Okay.
So let's put it on here so that I can say that when we start this
Alrighty.
process. Sorry, McPherson, go ahead.
That's okay. And they're not here, they're the new owner, so they wouldn't be responsible for anything in the past, but I do have a concern with the aesthetics of that building. I have had, not just the building, the entire property, they have had at time code enforcement issues. And whoever the new owner is, it'd be real nice if they understand that we'd like them not to be a code enforcement issue. And I don't want to nitpick with somebody. We've had other things around the city
Right.
that need to be fixed up and everything else. But that doesn't mean we're going to ignore things that look really bad.
Right. Well,
and
they
aren't
are
maintained well.
They are aware that they will be here tonight at 6,
Okay.
as all the applicants are, so we can address all of that.
Okay,
too.
thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
I have a question
Mr. Montahan.
in light of what Councilwoman McPherson just said. Does our ordinance provide that if, as kind of a remedy for code violations, that any kind of privileges or license issued by the city could be revoked?
There are certain items I have the ordinance here. I'll have to turn to that specific section, and I'll get with Jimmy, who's over code enforcement as well.
Let me let David weigh in on it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think there are some things, Nyrie's right, that we could revoke their license for, but I don't believe we can revoke their alcohol licenses because they hadn't cut their grass.
No.
Right.
With
Even
hold.
even if it's become like a severe issue where it's a constant, if
We'd
does it
have
reach
to-
a severity where it could possibly?
We'd have to change our ordinance
Right.
to
Okay.
make that a to hook those up.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And that makes sense because usually we'll address that with codes anyway, and they're coming to municipal court, so it's not like we're not addressing it. I guess if they were selling to minors, that's where the license comes in. That's one of the
Right.
things.
Okay, anybody else? All right, yeah, I would strongly advise the applicant to be here tonight.
Okay.
Because as has been said, it's not really their issues because they're the new owners, but
Right.
that particular location is going to get a little bit of extra attention right now, I can
Okay.
tell you.
They'll be here.
Just because of past, aesthetics and those kinds of things. My point is just make sure you advise them to be here tonight.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All righty.
All right. Item B2, amendment to community development fee schedule. There'll also be a public hearing on this item. Ron Johnson, you are up.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. And I did indicate here public hearing required, but after hearing Elisa's fee schedule update being on the consent agenda, this one, and I might need to have David weigh in on if this needs to be a public hearing or not. But what we're trying to do here is update our fee schedule for the Community Development Department. Currently, we have a fee schedule that's very simple. It's a one-page document that just charges for subdivision review, for rezoning, for variances, and for conditional uses. And we took a look at some other communities that are around us, communities throughout the state, and took a look also at our volume that we have in the office now. And we wanted to kind of set out to make this a much more comprehensive type of fee schedule. I know that Douglas County recently, in the past 2 to 3 months, they just adopted a new fee schedule as well. So we exchanged some ideas, exchanged some information to that regard. But we took a look at each of these individual sections of the fee schedule, starting with the rezoning section, and I felt that our current schedule of fees was actually fine for our rezoning section. It limits it by acreage, based off of acreage, I should say, and based off the type of property. So I wanted to try to duplicate that as well for variance requests, because we get a lot of different variance requests, as we know, and they vary greatly. Some of them are much more extreme than others are, and some of them are for industrial users, some are for commercial. So we had to ask ourselves also if it's fair for a residential property owner who wants a fence variance to pay the same amount as someone who's in the industrial park that's a money-making operation. So we tried to split it up based off of what chapter of the ordinance that they're requesting. So, for example, if you're requesting a bulk variance, so for front yard setback or for side yard setback height, things of that nature, those fees would be a different fee category than, say, if you were a PUD development that didn't want to follow our PUD rules. That should be much more extreme of a fee than for something like a bulk fee. So there's a big difference there and a big range. The difference that would range from, for example, $200 for example, a fence variance, let's say, for a residential property, compared to $1,500 for a developer that doesn't want to follow our PUD ordinance. And these fees are, of course, for each variance. So it really deters a developer from varying from our PUD standards, because they are very good PUD standards that we do have here, and it's very rare that we get a PUD development. We also split apart the special use permit fees. We were charging $250 across the board for a conditional use fee. I kept that the same for residential users, and for commercial and industrial users, that fee has gone up. That would be $500 for a commercial enterprise and $1,000 for an industrial enterprise. Of course, we have different types of special use permits and different types of special uses in there. Most of the ones for industrial properties, for example, are very, very extreme types of uses that really would obviously come before the council for a hearing anyway. But there probably needs to be a fee towards that, because there would be obviously a very large public noticing in some cases for those types of uses. It really depends. Some of the other fees that we tried to make some changes to were some of the more administrative ones in nature, including zoning verification letters. We charge $10 for those fees. Out of all of the municipalities that I reviewed, none of them were less than $35 for a verification letter. Most of them were over $70. So we wanted to put that at 75. We do get a lot of verification letters. I have some pending right now to be written, but I would say monthly we probably get anywhere between 5 to 10 of them. And some of them are coming from actual companies, or people who want to have a mortgage or get their mortgage, refinance or things of that nature. That's very different. Those are normal requests, but we're also getting requests now from real estate agents and from folks in the community, which is great that they're verifying zoning. And we do that over the phone for free. But if you want a letter as a part of that, that's a request that takes staff time. That really needs to be that's a special request in nature. So. We felt like it was proper to increase those fees. Same thing with certificate of occupancy and also appeals. But we weren't charging anything for annexations at all. And again, these would only be for annexations that are requested from folks that live outside of the city. So of course they're not taxpayers. And we're actually funding the meeting, so we would need some sort of fee to cover our costs there. And the rest are really administrative in nature fees, public hearing signs and things of that nature, alterations to PUD. We didn't have a fee for that, so I tried to create one there that was relatively reasonable. And administrative adjustments, same thing, $100 each. And so on and so forth here. But there was also some subdivision and plat fees that we didn't have as well, which was relatively alarming to me. I haven't seen or worked for a municipality that didn't have them before. But staff time, specifically now that we have a new process and so many different professionals involved from the city, including zoning, the city engineer, construction official, and other folks that have to actually review this. They're spending a lot of staff time, sometimes doing multiple reviews on the same projects, and we're not receiving any revenue from that at all. So that's a major gap in revenue that probably should be filled at some point, hopefully today, so we can start charging appropriately for some of these applications and special requests.
Okay, so let me first get from David whether or not this is going to require a public hearing. I can't imagine that it does.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Let me just ask Ron a question. The existing fees are not set forth in the zoning ordinance itself.
They are not, no.
So all we do is just reference a fee schedule. So with that being said, no, it does not require a public hearing.
Okay, all right, good. So we can try to handle this in the work session. This is probably pretty cumbersome, and you and I have not spent really probably any time talking about this, but I can understand when we begin to change fees, just like even with the cemetery fees. Anytime we start looking at fees, we need to sort of understand why we're doing that. And you talked about some of the mechanisms and all the various parties that have to put their hands on this, because there is certainly the argument that a lot of this stuff occurs at the staff level, irrespective of whether there's a fee or not. But some of these things, in fact, most of these things require multiple people at the staff level to look at them, and there is a cost for it. And I believe that there probably is a cost that needs to be calculated, so that in some way there does have to be a revenue offset for it, because otherwise you just have a flood of these types of requests coming in, and you spend a lot of staff hours working on that, as opposed to being able to do whatever other duties are on your plate. So I'm sympathetic to the need to make these changes. I want to know that we're doing it, and there's really a method to how you correlate this. Because, for example, if you're doing a rezoning or an annexation or something like that, it's hard for you to know up front what the cost offset would be, because you have to do notices. You got staff putting up the signs, you're creating the signs, you're sending out the certified letters, writing all the letters. So I can understand that, but I just want you to sort of be able to articulate how each of these came up, if council has those kinds of questions. So is there anybody who has any questions this morning? All right, Ms. McPherson.
You knew it was coming. Because we talked on the phone, and just a few things that hit me on this, because there's a balance between the fact that people are already paying taxes for government to operate. They're paying for employees, everything else. However, there can be things that become arduous. I don't know. Take a lot of extra additional staff time, which I think you answered to a degree, at least you did with me on the phone, that you don't want to be subsidizing somebody else's need. So somewhere in there's got to be a balance. Also, looking at other cities can be helpful in deciding how to do these things, but at the same time, it doesn't make it right. So you have some cities that charge exorbitant prices for things, and others that don't. So I'm wanting to know what we use as a formula. I mean, we've got to have some guideline in deciding, and you did explain a little bit of that. We're not going to charge somebody residential that just wants a fence, the same fee that we may have charged in industrial business that's profit making, that also would be a lot more involved probably in the plan review and everything else. So I get that, but I want to know that we have something that says we're charging this fee because we estimate, and I know you can't be super precise, but David, you may have to answer this too. There is, I just don't know if it applies in this case. I know there is some Georgia law that has to do with fees being connected to what it takes for a city to put in the effort to take care of that. This is a little different example, but it's the same reason why we have a 10 mile per hour tolerance on tickets, because there's cities and jurisdictions that used writing tickets as a revenue maker for their city. So the state adjusted that. So that's all. I understand that there's some things that take a lot more time, and if somebody thinks, hey, it doesn't cost me a thing, and I live outside the city, and I can keep asking for something else that's going to take a lot of time, maybe away from other things that need to be done, because they have no skin in the game whatsoever when they ask for that time to be invested. So what do we have guidelines as far as state law that make sure we don't get out of control where we're using things as a revenue maker?
Yeah, I think what you're referring to is the concept of impact fees, and we do not have impact fees here in the city of Villerica. Those are fees that are charged to developers, and you do have to go through a fairly sophisticated analysis to determine what the true cost is of the impact to the city on processing things. What Ron is proposing, I think, is doesn't go to the same level of impact fees. And you're right, our calculation of fees has to be reasonable. To look at a piece of paper, we can't say we got to pay $1 million for a staff person to look at this piece of paper. But Ron, I believe, has probably gone through the analysis of, for these different types of activities, it takes this amount of time for a staff person to review it and analyze it and give a decision. I mean, that's what we should be doing on all of these fees.
Okay.
So somebody decides what's reasonable.
Oh, I was going to address that too. Now, House Bill 312, I believe it was, or 302, which has been voted down at the state for the last 2 years, wanted to control our fee schedules, but it's
Can you get a little closer?
But that bill's been voted down for the past 2 years. That wanted to come in and tell municipalities how to set their fee schedule based on hours implemented in it, but it did not pass. But I think Ron, he did a really good job of comparing and knowing the man hour. We all kind of kicked in and put in the man hours that it takes for building department, code compliance, all these different things, where we're trying to take that off of the burden off the taxpayers. So we got 5,000 units coming into the city at the average they're making now. So outside developers will make $250 million on them 5,000 units. D.R. Horton, all these people that come do not live here will walk away from this city with $250 million. We're trying to put the burden on them and not the taxpayers.
Well, and just so I appreciate the first part, not about the House bills.
Right, yeah.
That really makes no difference because it hasn't passed.
Right.
But the part about you all had a conversation where you talked about
We
the
did.
man
Ron
hours
came around. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So I think that is very helpful to my point. And then the last piece doesn't make a difference to me how much they walk away making. The point is that they should be paying for the services that they are asking for. Okay.
Yep,
All right, Ms. McPherson, let Ms. McPherson finish.
Yeah, and the only reason the House bill or something like that might be pertinent is it has applied in other things, whether it's the laying down of cable. Some of these bills have come up at the state level. The little boxes they have to put, I think that's related to the Wi-Fi.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it became controversial because some cities were trying to charge exorbitant prices because either they didn't want or whatever. But anyway, I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that we are, using some sort of formula and guidance like that. And lastly, temporary signs are $50. That's not something that's changed. Just real quick, is that, I was thinking that used to be like a restaurant or a place just opened. They want to put out the little banners or an extra sign out. It's Pie Wednesday at O'Charlie's. Are we staying on top of that?
Oh yeah, they have to submit a sign permit in order to have them. So we charge at that time.
Okay, and how does codes know if they've done that or not?
They would usually come and ask us if we do have a sign permit or not for it.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Carter.
Thank you.
Okay, looking at your fee schedule here, I see at least 5 of these things: conditional use, variance, and these reviews, preliminary and final, and resubmittal. All those have been struck completely out, and that looks like a fair amount of money. Is that right? You struck those totally, and why did you strike them?
yes, those are our old fees for these. So I introduced, for example, for the first one there, conditional use permit was for $250, and the lines just above it that say special use permit fees, that's actually replacing the conditional use fee, since we now call conditional uses a special permit or special use permit. And the variance one is struck out, so we could, because we have a new table on the front page that's being proposed, and we increased the fees for verification letters and certificate of occupancies. Yeah, and the other fees down there for subdivision plan and for submittals, we've also broken those down. The subdivisions are on the last page, and each resubmittal is also broken out. Let's see.
You're saying these are being accounted for in other fees that you've added, increased or added, or what?
That's on here that we're introducing.
So we're not going to lose the income that we have based our budgets on?
No, we would not
Okay.
lose that income.
All right.
So it'd be safe to say, though, Ron, that no fees actually went away. In some cases, they have been rolled into other sections. In some cases, the name of it has changed. Okay,
That's right.
I think that's what Mr. Carter was asking. All right, Mr. Carter, you finished? Yeah. All right, Mr. Momptan.
Ron, okay, so my question is about how we apply these fees. So for example, we've had variances where the developer will come in and ask for certain number of variance in linear feet on a stream buffer, for example. So is that, if they say I need 1,300 linear feet variance, is that one variance?
That's correct. One
Even though it may
variance.
affect 10 lots?
It's one variance, yeah.
Okay.
We only charge once for that.
But if they asked for a front, if they had like 10 lots that were continuous, and they asked for a front yard setback variance, would that also be one?
No, because those are bulk regulations, and those are lots that are to be created and to be cut during the subdivision process, and those are like main zoning. They impact each individual lot, so there needs to be a variance for each individual lot for that. It's to roll them all into one and just do a master variance is a way to try to get away from that, but we don't do that by policy.
But wouldn't that, I mean, isn't it the same logic though you could apply to the stream buffer though?
The stream buffers are not a part of the zoning ordinance. They were part of the development regulations. We charge a
I see what you're
variance
saying.
fee. Yeah, that's the only fee that we can charge from a development regulation.
So that's not in Chapter 7 development standards then? Or is that?
No,
That's just part of the,
the development regulations book.
okay. Okay, I see. Okay. I mean, do you think maybe we should, and maybe, I don't know who, is that within your department or that's in Tracy's department or Bobby's? But maybe, I mean, it seems like
Yeah.
it seems like the logic could follow the same for the building lot or for the front setback.
Oh yeah.
You're basically getting if the person's building 1,000-foot fence, they're charged $200, right? But then you get 1,000-foot stream buffer, and it's a little bit different, even though it's affecting 10 different lots, for example.
I see
So
your point.
that's something
Yeah.
to consider. I just thought, okay,
We'll look into that.
thank you.
Okay. All right, Ms. McCoy.
You said you looked at other cities. What other cities did you look at?
We looked at cities and counties. We looked at Douglasville, Douglas County, Temple, looked at Dallas, Lilburn, and also Carroll County also.
Okay.
Or Carroll County or Carrollton.
Is there a possibility, you were saying something, I just got a little confused. Is there a possibility, you were saying like a homeowner with a fence, that they're not going to have to come here and do a public hearing or anything necessarily?
They would if it's a
Well,
fence.
let me finish my
Oh,
question, sorry. But is there any way that like something like that, where a homeowner's just getting something fairly simple, would be in the same category as a developer who's like making money off a property, like something like a setback?
The way that it's currently is exactly how you describe, and we're trying to break that out to where the residential would pay a lower fee than an industrial or a commercial user would.
Okay, so would a developer be considered commercial and a residential be considered a homeowner?
That's
Okay,
correct.
That was my question. My other comment, I think it seems like these fees, from a high level, are basically the more level of work required by staff, the more the fee is going to be. That seems like the logic. I just wanted to verify.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, because of course, when I'm reviewing and I keep up with all of my staff hours when it comes to planning reports. Some of them you guys get, and they're super long. They're like 20 pages long. And usually that we wouldn't do that, of course, if it's just like a variance request for a simple fence. But if it's something that is many more. Or I guess more complex, if you will, something that's more complex or something that is a major user that we would need to do a lot of analysis for, then that's going to take a lot more time. So some of my reports can take 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours, a whole day, depending on what it is. So as a part of that, I, would take whatever staff time that I have and or how many hours that I used, and I try to think of that plus the cost of actually the facilities that we're using, the cost of all the other reviews in our department that need to go into it, and if we need to reach out to other professionals or things of that nature, we would have the money on hand to be able to do that. So.
And then my last question is, when was the last time these were updated? Do you have any?
That is a really good question. I've tried to find the answer to that quite a bit, actually, but it seems like I know that they've been like this at least. We haven't had any updates in our department since before I got here, which was February in 2019.
Okay. That's my last question. I'm good.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
thank you.
I have a
Follow-up? All right.
I have a follow-up to
Mr.
your response
Monahan.
to Councilwoman McCoy's question there. So, so she gave you the kind of the hypothetical that if a developer comes in, that would be, and you said that would be a commercial if they requested a variance, but it says variance by use type. So if a developer came in for a residential
Right.
subdivision and they needed a front yard setback variance, that would be residential. That's not commercial just because
That
it's
is
developer,
correct.
right?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Let me clarify that. So
Okay.
yes, if it's it doesn't matter who the user type is. It's all linked to the use type. So if I'm a developer and I haven't subdivided already, and I have 10 variances that I need to come to the council for, we'll charge for all 10 of those for the different sections, based off of residential for if since as a developer. So. If it's a regular homeowner, they would be from the same exact category as that developer would too, unless it's a PUD. If it's a PUD development, of course, then it's
Okay.
they'll
All
charge
right.
the PUD fee.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Is there any objection to making this consent number 5? All right. Hearing no objection, we will make that consent number 5. Let's move on to B3. This is an amendment to section 9.29 wall signs of the Villerica sign ordinance. Is there a public hearing on this as well?
There is.
There is. Okay. All right. So let's introduce this item and see where we go.
Yes, sir. This is an amendment to section 9.29 wall signs. And periodically we, of course, go through our ordinance and check out some different sections that we would like to update based off of issues that a developer or a business owner or whomever may have with different sections through time, and we kind of add those up, or even certain things that we see in the office when we're reviewing different files. And one of them, I believe this one may have just been an error in the code. Our current wall sign regulation is a scalable. It allows for scalable based off of the, according to this at least, the frontage of the property, which doesn't sound right, I don't think, to anyone. Obviously, properties have, they can have hundreds and hundreds of feet of frontage, and that would allow for signs that are much, much larger than what any of us would consider or want, probably. So we're trying to change that to facade. The section reads out as shall be a wall sign shall be a maximum area of 2 square feet per 1 linear foot of the primary tenant frontage, and signs for secondary frontages shall be calculated at a rate of 1 square foot per 1 linear foot of tenant facade. We're trying to change that to facade instead of frontage. We want to kind of base it off of the tenant's facade itself. That sounds a lot. That sounds like that's how that should have been reading from the beginning. So we want to try to correct that.
Well, so we're going to have a public hearing on this tonight, so we won't take up a lot of time here. But tell me the difference between, give me the definition between frontage and facade first.
Yes. So the definition of frontage would be where the right-of-way meets the property itself at the front property line for the entire frontage or the entirety of the street
front.
Street
Okay.
front.
All right, go ahead.
The facade width would be basically the facade of the building, the building wall itself, for however much space the tenant takes up. So that's a much smaller area, as you can imagine. So with our wall signs allowing for 2 square feet per 1 linear foot, a linear foot of a roadway, let's say a property 600 feet long, that's a 1,200 square foot sign.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. Are there any questions, even though we'll have this at the public hearing tonight, Mr. Montana?
So the second reference in that sentence that you read off, Ron, it goes on to say, and signs for secondary frontages. So that should that remain frontages or should that be facades as well? Because are you basically saying if there's a side or rear frontage, any sign on the side and rear frontage would then follow the following calculation? But should that be facades though? As I could read it both ways, I think, but I just wanted to make sure that should not be changed.
From what I'm seeing facade everywhere. I took out all references.
On the second, the version I have, it says in the second line there, I'll read the whole
Sure.
sentence. Shall be a maximum area of 2 square feet per 1 linear foot of the primary tenant facade, and signs for secondary frontages shall be calculated at a rate of 1 square feet, so on.
Right, so we're taking out frontage, and we're leaving facade.
Yeah, but
there's a
he's
second
talking about the
reference.
second frontages.
There's a second where it says secondary frontage
It's on
there.
the screen.
See where frontage is marked
Yeah,
out,
I see it.
facade, and signs for secondary frontages.
Yeah, and I'm
So
just
should that be
reading it
facades
back to
or-
myself here.
Okay.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that should stay. I think that if we're allowing signs, wall signs to face frontages, they're talking about where it's facing
Right.
per se, not necessarily how large that it should be or that it should be a relation to that.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't go the other way.
Okay.
So
All right,
thanks.
What is the secondary frontage?
Secondary frontage is not the primary frontage. It's it's a frontage that is, like, for example, the front door faces the primary frontage.
Side or rear?
So it'll be like side or rear.
So that's an unusual type of structure, building, but I've seen them.
Yeah,
I
like a
think there's
corner
one over
lot
on
or
South
something.
Carroll Road that has a second frontage to the side of it. You got a primary, and then there's a secondary that appears to be a frontage. It's rare, but I can understand that. I thought that was pretty good. All right, anybody else? Okay, this item will have a public hearing tonight, so we're going to move on. B4, amendment to section 9.406B, banners of the Villerica sign ordinance. There'll also be a public hearing on this item. So Ron, let's introduce it and see what happens.
All right. So this amendment is to insert a line within this subsection that reads the following. It's reads, banners may also be located on adjacent contiguous parcels that are under common ownership as the parcel where the use associated with the banner is located. So this change is being requested because we have a lot of owners of parcels that have adjacent parcels that may be undeveloped, that may wish to put actual banners from time to time closer out towards their road frontage on those vacant parcels. They would still have to meet all of the requirements of a temporary banner, the limitations on time and things of that nature. But if their use is far away from the main road and they have other parcels in the front, we currently can't permit that in our ordinance. So we had this actually come up with a user before. It was a house of worship, and they had several vacant parcels all around them. And we ultimately, we had to send them a denial, but then ended up approving it, as a temporary measure because of the type of use that it was and the type of holiday and the things that were coming kind of as ahead. So we wanted to make an amendment to this section to try to take care of those types of situations.
Okay. All right. Are there any questions? All right. So this item will have a public hearing. It's pretty self-explanatory there, so we'll take this up tonight, Ron. All right.
All right.
B5, amendment to section 7.03, entrance/drive standards contained in the City of Villerica zoning code. Now, is this going to require a public hearing?
Yes, sir.
So that's not on here.
Had it listed on the cover sheet here.
It's not on the agenda. Okay, all right, so this will have a public hearing. Go ahead and introduce it, Ron.
All right. Section 7.03 is our entrance drives and standards section. It talks a lot about parking lot standards and parking space sizes, things of that nature. But one of the sections that has come up as a variance item before several times, I believe, at least two that I can recall, dealt with table 7.6, which is on the last page of the ordinance. Section that you have there, but we're looking to remove that section because I realized that we have three sections of our or three regulations for the same thing. We have one in this section, we have one in another section that we'll also be talking about tonight, and then we have another in our development regulations. They all say different things. So what I'm trying to do here and what the request is just to remove these sections from our zoning ordinance and refer back to the development regulations. I've had a lot of conversation with Bobby about this and the city manager. And of course, it doesn't make much sense for us to have multiple standards for the same thing. But this is something that really should rest with the city engineer and the development regulations.
All right, are there any questions? All right, if there are no questions, this item, Mr. Carter.
It looks like you're totally deleting table 7.6, is that correct?
That's right. That's the
Okay.
only change to this section.
Okay. All right, since this item will have a public hearing, we'll take it up tonight. Let's move on to B6. This is an amendment to section 9.03, multifamily and single-family attached design standards contained in the City of Villerica zoning code. And this item will also have a public hearing. All right, go ahead, Ron.
All right. Section 9.03, we've had a number of variances from as well, and we're still continuing to kind of chip away at this section and try to make it a better section since it's a very important one for the city. And it's going to take some time, of course, to get it right, but we think that we're really moving in the right direction here. We're proposing to introduce some additional fenestrations for townhomes. On this is just to the entryway of townhomes, where a developer would have the ability to choose these different fenestrations or 2 points from a list that they would have to include on the front of the townhomes. This is in addition to a new regulation not to allow for recessed entry into townhomes, and entries shall not protrude from the dominant front facade wall more than 3 feet. So it kind of gives a little bit of rules there as far as how far the entry can be going in or out or pushed in and pushed out.
Would you define fenestrations? I mean, I read it, so I know now, but I wouldn't have known.
I would just define it as a fancy term for details. So just facade details for a building. But we're also looking to reduce the depth of garages. Right now, we require a 20 by 22 foot garage. May have those numbers reversed. But most two-car garages are 20 by 20, and so we would like to reduce that kind of standard down to a more standardized thing that we would see on a regular basis. And we're also looking to remove part of section 9.03 2C. which is a requirement to orient multifamily buildings towards a city road or street or a common open space or cluster to form neighborhoods. It sounds like a great regulation. I at first certainly kind of agreed to it on principle. However, because of the topography in Villerica and with working with the developers that we have already approved and realizing that none of them can meet this section and it's relatively arbitrary in nature the way that it's written, that we're proposing to remove that actually from the ordinance entirely. In order to kind of allow for more creative designs and to allow for them to build, I guess, deeper into the properties and in different ways that they may need to, or use parking lots instead of streets and things of that nature that they may need for like a multifamily building. So we didn't think it was right to continue forward with such an arbitrary standard like this.
Okay. So this item will have a public hearing. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah,
Mr. Carter.
I'm looking at your list of, I'm assuming you're adding this total list of points to be added from the things below. Number 5 says pent roof. What's a pent roof? P-E-N-T.
I have no idea either. You said number 5.
Yeah. It says it's on, coming down your list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on Roman numeral. In this section you added that preliminary entryway for townhomes.
Let's see.
It's under section 6 of entries.
Yep, going down my list here.
And it, number 5 says pent roof, P-E-N-T, and I don't know what that is.
Oh, a pent roof. It's a type of it's just a shape of a roof. It's hard to describe this. This is something that really needs to be written, or drawn. But it's a type of roof. You see the ones. It's almost like a shed roof that kind of goes back towards the building at the top, and at the bottom point it comes out. It's like a shed roof. That's a pent roof.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh, never heard of that one. Okay.
Google
Yeah.
says it's also called a mono-pitched roof.
Mono-pitch.
It's just a single slope roof. Comes down like that.
All right. Is that it, Mr. Carter? Yeah. All right.
You
Ms.
took me back to
McPherson?
college there for a moment. I had to remember.
No, that's why sometimes I'll ask for definitions or this or that, because I think of people that are listening. I try to think of it, a regular citizen who doesn't do this all the time, and I still have to ask as much as I have it come across. Yeah, really it's just a point to be made. You notice how many of these things we modify and we change, and I think it should be educational to us to not be so dogmatic in things, well, that's the way we do it, and there's no flexibility, because we are finding that we're having to change a number of our ordinances and requirements because it looked good on paper, or maybe it used to work. And I like the fact that you're working with developers and people who have to live this out, have to apply what we're putting into regulations. And so this is a just reminder to me that we need to have that flexibility, and that's why there's room for variances. We've had stuff that we required of builders 2 years ago that now aren't required.
It's a learning
And
process.
yeah.
For all of us.
So it
I
does
think.
change. So I hope with time, there's a good reason we're doing all this. And we're
We
going to be.
We started out strong with our
Yeah.
strongest standards,
Yeah.
so that's a good
So
thing.
thank you. I appreciate that you do that and that you're looking at this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Got Ms. McPherson, Mr. Carter. Anybody else? All right, Ms. McCoy.
Okay, my first thought is this isn't going to be like the garages that have to be in the back and everybody's going to come get a variance.
Nope. Mm-mm.
Okay, this is trying to prevent that.
This, it only changes to the garages would be just kind of limiting the sizes to a more standardized size.
Okay, I was going to ask about that, why it was going from 22 to 20.
Yeah.
That's because 20 is a more standard size.
Yeah, it's a much more standardized size. We see that almost all the time.
Okay, so will this, I guess my question is, will this help? I don't know the word I'm looking for, but will this help people seeking variances? Will there not be so many, maybe?
Yeah, it should
Okay.
definitely help. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's my question. I'm done.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, this item will have a public hearing, so we're going to move on. Let's go to B7. This is an amendment to section 9.04, the non-residential design standards contained in the City of Villerica zoning code. This item will also have a public hearing, right?
That's right.
But
Yes,
it's
sir.
not on here, so we need to make sure we get this on here, folks. All right, go ahead, Ron. Introduce it.
All right, section 9.04 is the non-residential design standards section, so this covers commercial and industrial buildings. We're looking to revise, this goes back to the driveway distances thing that we talked about. So we altered the section 7 section for the entrance and exit drive 2 ordinances ago. But now we're looking in the architectural design standards, which also had its own standard for this. So this is the second one in the zoning ordinance that we're looking to remove in favor of the development regulations for driveway distances. But we're also, when I was reviewing the section, I noticed that it spoke about a corridor overlay zone, which we actually we don't have. A corridor overlay zone, so I'm removing that reference. That's the only reference in the ordinance to that.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? All right. If there are no questions on that one, that sounds pretty easy, but it's going to have a public hearing, so we'll take no action here. Let's move on to B8. All right. Thank you, Ron. I didn't think you were ever going to sit down. Why you needed those fee changes now? You're busy. All right, B8, Hickstown Brewery, FS wall repair. This is Nick.
I have a question before
So
we
Nick
start.
and Janet. Hang on just a second. All right.
Okay, so I started last Thursday doing my agenda and everything. I have no B8. When did this get added? Because I have a printed agenda.
This was submitted yesterday. Sorry for the late submission. It was trying to kind of in.
You don't want me doing my homework only a day before.
Well, you know how it goes.
So, okay, so yesterday, that's
Okay.
why.
Yes,
Okay.
I apologize.
Yeah, well, there is, but sometimes these, like, this is a repair. All right, go ahead and introduce this item.
So, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. This, I'm going to give you a little introduction of what the request is that we're asking today. In February, we were awarded a grant via the Go Georgia Arts program, and this is an in-kind grant. So we are responsible for the artist doing the mural and the work, preliminary work to do the mural. We did get permission from Hickstown, the owner of the Hickstown building, to put the mural there. However, we are responsible for the getting the wall ready and getting the artwork done. So John Christian is the artist for this project, and he came out and he and I looked at the Hickstown wall, and of course that is a historic building and the wall is in need of great repair. So Nick went and got 3 bids for us to get the wall prepped and ready, because the goal for the artist, we have to get this done before December 2022. But this gives us statewide recognition on the Georgia Mural Trail. There's several other cities. There's 28 cities out of 31 murals out of 28 cities that are involved in this program, which is really awesome for us. It will be a train mural. And so this is something we want to do to get the wall prepped, because we want the longevity of the mural to last many, many years. For an example, LaGrange, a few years ago, as I mentioned to the mayor, did a mural and they got water damage to that wall, and the mural started falling off the wall. So we don't want to be in that situation, because of the cost of the mural, to be in that situation where the mural starts falling off. The owner, like I said, gave us permission to put the mural there. We want to prep the wall so the artist can start mid-July, August, and start painting the wall. And the property owner is going to replace the rotted windows. Because of the scope of this project, and it is 2 stories, that's the wall. We have to do the entire wall, not some of it, not a third of it, but the entire wall, which is, again, 2 stories. So this is kind of the pre-story of why we're presenting the Hickstown wall repair.
Okay, tell us a little bit about where it's located. in terms of there's a park there.
Yes, there's a
how
park
much it
there.
cost and whether it's budgeted.
Yes, so this will be, product development money will be used to do this work. This wall was chosen because it is a high traffic area and it is right across the street from the park, Prospectors Park that we own. So we feel like this is a great start to many murals that we're hoping to do in the future. This is a great location for us to put this mural.
Okay, product development money budgeted.
Yes, sir.
Prospect Park. Okay, all right, Nick, tell us about the repair.
All right. So upon inspection of the wall, we've noticed there's already pieces of the stucco coming away from the mesh in the EFIS job that's current. That just means it's starting to separate a little bit. It could either be from age or water damage or both. And so the process to get this wall, adequate enough and firm enough to, one, hold the extra weight of the paint, even though obviously it's not a lot, but we're putting a new application on this wall. So we received 3 bids to pretty much resurface the entire wall. We're going to put new mesh and it's called EFIS. And they're going to grind down any kind of loose areas, any cracked areas. You can kind of, if you go up to the wall, anywhere there's a crack or a piece falling off and you kind of knock on it, you can hear that it's hollow. So they're going to go a few feet around that hollow area, grind down any potential loose areas, and then put a new mesh. And also a benefit to the artist is doing this whole resurface will also give him a fresh base coat to paint on. So it's going to be a lighter brown finish. I did receive 3 bids. The third bid did not want to submit a formal bid unless he was actually chosen. So I have a text message, and I understand. So I have a text message from in the amount of $19,000. Harrison Contracting is actually the low bid at $16,609. The funds that would be allocated for this project is going to be included in Miss Jennifer's budget amendment. But other than that, we're just wanting to prep the wall and make sure that this mural lasts a great long time.
All right, well, since you brought it up, what is a great long time?
There is absolutely no guarantee. I'm not going to stand up here and lie to you.
Is there a minimum? I didn't want you to lie.
Right.
You brought it up.
There's a minimum of 10 is a consensus.
Okay. All right. Council, any questions? Let's start with Mr. Carter.
Okay. It says you've already engaged an artist to paint the mural. Was that a competitive engagement, or we just have an artist, or how does that come about?
With this particular grant, the artist comes with
the grant?
Yes, sir. Exactly.
All right. Ms. McPherson.
Yeah, I think that's because we're working through Department of Community Affairs. Is it that, which part of the state government with the murals does these grants?
It's the Georgia Go Georgia Arts program, which is John Christian, and he is the artist. So this
Okay.
is something he created several years ago to bring more artwork into the state of Georgia and the downtowns.
Okay, that might be separate from some of the ones I've seen down in Pine Mountain and that sort of thing. Okay, so I knew this was coming. There's been stuff in the works. I knew we awarded the grant. Thank you for the explanation. That is a big help, because in my mind I was going, how come it costs so much to prep that wall? And if you didn't give a good explanation, now I have the cover sheet for it. That's helpful. I guess wherever they used to put those Coca-Cola ones, those used to last pretty good. So they must have known what they were doing. Coca-Cola signs all over barns and brick and everything else, like across the street.
It's funny you brought Coca-Cola up, because he's done several of those murals around. Coca-Cola hires him to go and do those murals.
Yeah,
for
they're
them.
very particular from what I get. You have to use certain color of red, and everything else, Coca-Cola okays it. Okay. I'm good.
Okay. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, I got a question that
Yes,
I
sir.
wanted to ask. Janet, you said we had permission from the owner of Hickstown to paint on his wall on the building. Do we have an agreement with them?
I have an email, David, from the property owners that we are allowed to use that wall. Yes, and I can send that to you.
I think it's probably going to be a good idea for us to actually have a written agreement with them, because if they sold the building
Okay.
next year, then we might not have an agreement. So we
Right,
need
and
to
that
get
longevity might be affected.
right.
Okay.
That great long while might turn into a year.
Yeah.
So let's get an agreement with them.
Yeah, so I would
Okay.
say that you have to have that. In fact, I would have assumed that we'd already done that, so you have to make sure that you have that agreement with Hickstown before you can proceed, or whoever owns the building. It's
Yeah,
not
I
even
have it,
Hickstown.
yes, via email, but yes, I can get it in
I
its
understand.
form letter.
But
Yeah.
let's get the city attorney to write an agreement on that we can live with. Okay, David, do you have any reason to not approve this pending that agreement? Would you like to bring that agreement back first, or are you good?
I think we should say pending entering into an agreement with the building owner, but I'm fine for you to vote on it tonight.
Okay.
Can I add one more thing just
Yes.
to be transparent? I did speak to the artist, I'm sure you have as well. Every 2 or 3 years, from what he said, this painting will need, like a fresh clear coat or a protective layer. So there may be some maintenance in the future that the city will have to work out with the artist on whether or not, where those funds are coming from as far as maintenance. I know he had mentioned that possibly, it's something that we could do in-house or hire, like a smaller subcontractor to come in and just put a fresh coat of clear coat on it or just protection. So I just wanted to mention that.
Well, no, I appreciate that, but you might have cleared it up in your last couple of words, but it sounded like you thought the artist had to be the one to come out and do the touch-ups. But are you just simply talking about
There just
a
needs
clear
to be
protective-
a application of a clear coat in the next 2-3 years, or 2-3 years after the painting is done, is recommended by the artist.
Is there an estimation of how much that would cost?
I can't imagine it's going to be over $1,500 to $2,000 just to roll on a clear coat.
Every couple of years?
Yes, sir.
And I guess you would need to budget that out of product development money, though. Okay, I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Okay. All right. Is there any other questions here? All right. Is there any objection to making this consent number 6? All right. Mr. Carter?
Pending the agreement, you mean?
Well, yeah, David will have the agreement. Okay, let's move to C1, Downtown Development Authority, reappointment of Ellen McBrayer. I guess staff recommends the reappointment of Ellen McBrayer to the Downtown Development Authority. Is there any objection to making that consent number 7?
I don't have an
question.
objection.
All right, hang on.
But I have a
Ms. McPherson.
Yeah, it's really more of a question. So I believe it's the cover sheet. I haven't gotten to that yet, but in my head, the cover sheet in here said there's 1 open position and 2 expired, but we're bringing forward 1 person. So that's my question. We have a total of 3 open positions, but only 1 person is being brought forward for a position. So what's going on with the others?
There is still open position that is, we're waiting, or we're receiving, and we actually received 2 applications for that position, and we'll talk about that in our board meeting at the end of this month. There is another expired term, which is Carl Peabody, and he's going to continue to serve at this time. So his term is expired, but he is going to serve, I think, towards the end of the year, so I have not brought that back to you.
Okay, all right. So there's really, if you consider the reappointment, 2 positions we're looking at, not 3. Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Carter.
Okay. There is 1 open position, though, and
That's
no one
correct.
has applied for that.
There has been applications received. The board has not voted on that at this time. So we've just
Okay.
received 2, so we have a 3 total that we're going to look at the end of this month in the board meeting.
Okay, next meeting we'll
Yes, sir.
see one of these. Okay.
I would say, though, on Carl, even though he can continue to serve until he's replaced, I think it'd still be a good idea to go ahead and bring him for reappointment.
Okay.
Then if he decides to resign and sets a future date for
We
that,
can do
then
that.
take it up like that. I think
Sure.
that'd be a good idea. All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, okay, anybody else? Mr. Montahan.
Well, my point is not just for this one, but also for the next section for all the 4 reappointments. My understanding was that we were not going to, in these agenda items, we were going to include all of the applicants, and we weren't going to, even though we weren't going to put the name of the presumed person in there.
That's right, thank you.
So that way council could consider every person, even though the individual board may make a recommendation, but we don't have the full applicants of any other persons for all 5 of these.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't I don't remember exactly how that was. It looks to me like there are no other applicants to be considered here on this item because the board still needs to look at it. This is the one that they've recommended out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
but
she
I don't really-
reapplied for her appointment, for her, when her appointment expired, and she asked to be reappointed, and the board did so.
Were there any other applicants though for that her position or her that are pending DDA?
There
Maybe they
was
were just
one
waiting.
application that we received, and then there's two within the last week that we've received. Actually, yesterday I think Elisa sent me one, but those have not been reviewed for an actual appointment or recommendation to be
By
put
the
on the board.
DDA.
That's correct.
Okay. So it's my understanding though, Mayor, and that's I'm just trying to get clarification on the process here. Not anything particular about Ellen or the DDA, but just for all these board appointments, was that if there's an open position and they're seeking to fill, the staff is seeking to fill it, we would get a list of we have copies of applications for all persons who've applied for those
Exactly.
open positions, and that the agenda particularly would not necessarily make it look like there's a presumption that this person's going to get it for a more fair, open process.
He's exactly right.
Hang
And
on a
there's
second. I don't remember exactly how we did that, but I do remember that we did talk about, there was a balance between whether or not the staff would have a recommendation and versus whether we put it on the agenda or the cover sheet. So I don't know how to resolve that in all of these. Do you have additional So I don't know. I'm struggling because apparently you want to take it to your board before you send over the applications, and what council is suggesting is that they don't really care what you do. So if it was a reappointment, you thought that we would the reappointments would come up.
Ellen applied before we got these other applications.
Yeah, but that's an assumption.
But she is a reappointment. Hang on just a second. But she is a reappointment though, so it wouldn't have mattered when she applied. Hang on a second. All right, Mr. Carter.
Okay, we're dwelling on that particular one, but I understand what they're gonna do, and they're gonna review those. Now, I'm assuming they'll show us all the applications, and they'll suggest which one they want to have. I think we're really talking about D. Below us, the next four, they are saying reappoint, but there's other applications, and we wanted to see all the applications and have them suggest which one that they want to have.
So I
remember doing that.
Yeah, I do know that we talked about all of the applications being included in the packet, and that the staff would still have a recommendation, but that it might not be on the agenda or might not.
Well,
be
I
on the
can't
cover
bring
sheet.
you applications if we just got them, and we had already set the agenda and already the deadline.
Well, that's the
deadline
reason
had
I'm
already
struggling
passed.
with it.
Yeah, the
I
deadline had
understand
already
that.
passed before this came up.
I understand. That's why I'm struggling, and it was a struggle when we talked about it. But I can respect the idea that they want to see them all.
Sure.
You know, and I can respect the idea that they don't want there to be a presumption of who's going to get it. And I'm struggling with the fact that reappointments should probably have some priority, since it's not like we have people banging the doors down to get on these boards. So have you sent in these packets these aren't all yours, I'm sorry.
Right.
But you have no more applicants in this item, right?
No, sir.
Okay. I don't know what to do. I hate to beat this to death because we already have this person here, and now we're sitting here haggling over whether or not this person is going to get reappointed. And even though that's not what's happening, it's what can look like it's happening.
Right.
So what do we want to do here? Does
Mayor-
somebody have? All right.
Okay.
Hang on. Let her.
Thank you so much, Mahat, for bringing our attention, because sometimes we forget the things we do and the whole intent. And I was definitely very involved in this. When we made this decision, there'll be discussions of it in the minutes of past meetings and everything. These are our boards. Our boards. We appoint them. Now, staff is allowed to come in, and we don't have to do this, but it's more or less become our policy that they'll make a suggestion as to who they would recommend. We know there was already an application in, so we really should get the person who wants to continue to serve along with any additional applications so that we actually know who's all available for that. Sometimes we may not want to appoint the same person. We may choose someone else. So all those options need to be on the table. But and we did talk about not putting the name on the line, because how awkward is that to go, here's the reappointment of such and we choose somebody else? I mean, that's really awkward. So we need to have everybody ahead of time to consider. And to me, if somebody's already on there and to reappoint them, that tends to just naturally add a few more points unless they don't show up at meetings, they're not doing their job, and something like that. But I want to emphasize these are our appointments, and we do need to see everybody. And hopefully the advertising's getting done well enough, because we had one application, but you've gotten two more. So I don't know how long ahead that the notifications are made to let people know we may have some openings, have your applications in. I'm not in charge of that, so I don't know that when that goes out, but that might be important too. Then maybe we could already have those applications in. Because this was an expiration in May, which wasn't that long ago, but the public does need to be notified that there can be openings really at almost any time. But thanks, Matt, because I had forgotten some of that.
You're welcome.
All right,
Mayor,
Matthew.
I was just going to say, we have an agenda deadline. So obviously, if somebody doesn't submit their application by the agenda deadline, then that's your cutoff date for when that they would be submitted along with the packet. So, if the agenda deadline was the 29th and they submit on the 30th, then they'll just have to, their application will just be pending the next opening. But if someone submits on the 28th, I mean, that's just the way, we have to have a reasonable cutoff date, and we already have that published. It's known, then I think that's just what we work with.
There would have only been one other application in, I think.
But in her case, that's not what she's saying. She's saying that they take them before their board and ask the board to vote on a recommendation, not that they showed up before the agenda cutoff. So what are we saying? That we don't want them, we don't want the boards reviewing these applications and making recommendations? Is that what we're saying?
No, but if the board knows the expiration of that person's term is coming up, that's the time to address it then. This is July. So get the notice out and talk about it. We didn't have a meeting in June. I don't know, or otherwise things may have to be delayed because we
Right.
should have a choice.
I mean, that's one
Yeah.
reason it didn't get brought to you before
Yeah,
then.
which
because we
makes
didn't meet
sense.
in June.
I understand that.
Right.
Okay. But I don't know if they met. DDA may have met even
They
though
did.
we didn't. Okay,
did.
so they know when their meetings are, and they know when the expirations are coming up. They're usually checking more than we are.
Just a reminder, they do not meet until the fourth Monday of every month, so.
Okay. So they can adjust accordingly, knowing when they meet in relation to when we meet again.
Yeah, go ahead.
That was more involved.
So you do want the boards to vote, but you don't want us to put the name of their recommendation on the cover sheet? Is that what I'm hearing?
Not on the cover sheet, on the agenda. I think the issue is that if it's on the agenda, the public looks at the agenda and they presume, okay, Joe Blow is going to get reappointed. There's no point in
Just
showing
don't
up.
put it on the
Right.
agenda.
I think that's just a deterrent.
Okay.
But I think, and again, in the cover sheet, you could say DDA or RAC or Main Street recommends, Joe Smith
what we
to be. But we also had Billy Ray and Carl Jr. and all those folks too.
So
And include those.
what we could do is just every time you get an application, because they come to you, just go ahead and send them out to the council. To the council. And when an item comes up for reappointment, you just put the item on the agenda, and if there's a recommendation, you can put it in the cover sheet, and if there's not, just let them
Okay.
bounce back and forth with whatever they're gonna do. Because once we do this, I mean, I've always thought the people who want to be reappointed should be strongly considered. In fact, they should have the probably the more likely chance of being appointed. But I don't mind doing it that way. It makes just makes no difference to me.
Mayor, if I may.
So let's do this. So we want to probably, I guess, put these off until the next agenda to August.
Okay.
Yours, and then I'm gonna say the same thing to I guess it's gonna be Parks and Rec, Tracy and Rachel. Okay, so those will all get moved to August. And what you need to do is send all of your applications to all of the council members. And then when you bring it back in August, don't have a name on the agenda. But if you choose to have a recommendation on the cover sheet, do that. All right, that sound good?
Yep.
All right, let's do that.
Okay.
All right, let's
Thank you.
move on to E Public Works. Bobby Elliott. Well, may not be. Let's see. All right, number 1, auction of non-running / retired vehicles and small equipment on govdeals.com. Charlie Davis.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Morning.
A little housekeeping here today. We haven't had an auction on our disabled vehicles for a couple, 2 or 3 years, but I have 6 older vehicles that are either had the engine blown, transmission's bad, just a multitude of problems, and 3 of the old Carroll County inmate vans that are no longer running, that we don't have the crews for anymore either. And then on small equipment, we have a forklift that has a bad engine, and one of the golf carts. When we were getting it ready for the fireworks show, the costs were just way in excess of what it was worth. So we're just looking for permission to get these listed on our GovDeals site, where we've used them since 2009 to get rid of our older vehicles and equipment, and had good success. They simply take 7.5% of the sale. They do all the advertisement, make the ads and everything, and handle it, and we just get the check for it. And people have 30 days to come get it. If they don't, then they get listed again at no cost to us.
Okay.
So that's all we're looking for on this today. Hey, we need the parking space.
Yeah,
We have no parking spaces left in the Avani building.
I saw that. All right, any questions? All right, Mr. Carter.
I'm a little curious. Who buys these non-running equipment type? They buy them just for the metal, or
They'll actually, right now is a pretty good time to sell them, because if salvage yards will buy them a lot of times when they're not running, but they'll part them out. And right now, with parts being what they are,
just buying them for
it might
parts,
be
that's it.
surprising what they bring.
Okay, buying them for parts.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else? All right. If there are no more, you got off easy, Charlie, to see if there's any objections to making that consent number 7.
Nope.
All right. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, sir.
Let's do E2, Flowers Bakery Culvert, the material purchase. This is going to be Bobby Elliott.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I know everybody has got an idea of how bad the supply chain issues are that we're having. Charlie complains all the time trying to get parts for cars. That's what led us to this item. We had the bid opening was scheduled for the Flowers Bakery Culvert project on June the 24th. The design called for 54-inch reinforced concrete pipe. Can't get it, period. So we scrambled around and started checking with some of the bigger counties in the metro area about what they were doing about this issue, because any kind of pipe system under a roadway has always been old school reinforced concrete. Stormwater projects, pipes keep failing, work has to continue. What are you going to put in? So we decided to change material specifications on the Flowers Bakery Culvert project to a corrugated metal pipe product that Contact makes. It's aluminized corrugated metal pipe that's been dipped in high density polyethylene. 50, 60-year lifespan. That's what this agenda item is recommending. We 5 to 6 weeks on delivery. We pushed back the bid opening for this project to July the 26th. We feel a little bit better about getting the materials, but we've had very little interest from contractors on picking up packets to bid this project. So, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but things are really serious out in the industry right now, and everybody's experiencing. Developers can't get ductile iron pipe. to put water main in subdivisions. We don't know. But that being said, we'd like to recommend this product that we've priced from Contact Products. It's a good product. I've used similar products from them before. Like I said, I like concrete. If you can't get it, you got to do something, because the driveway is continually settling, and we can't afford to let that driveway fail, because Flowers has no other way in and out, and their bakery runs 24/7, 365. So, but that being said, the price for the pipe and the end treatments total $41,005.92. It is budgeted. Staff would recommend approval.
I got a question.
Bobby. Well, let me just ask real quick. So what's the lifespan on the RCP versus this? You said 50, 60 years on this, but.
Well, reinforced concrete, I'd like to say unlimited.
Okay.
But who knows?
Gotcha.
But this is a good substitute, given that there's nothing else out there.
Right. And is there a price differential?
The reinforced concrete is about double what this price is.
Okay. All right. Service Carter.
Okay, you say you already have the bids in for the project. You said
No, we have not. We have not.
You said you were going to delay the bid opening.
What we did is we had to scramble around and issue an addendum to change the material specifications.
Changing the pipe should not affect the bid, should it? I mean, we're paying for
Yes, it will. Reinforced concrete is a lot harder to install. It's a lot more labor intensive with machinery. This pipe's a lot lighter. And
so that should reduce the bids a little bit.
What we had to do, we got within a week of the bid opening, and we were hoping that we'd get more interest from larger contractors that maybe have a better chance of getting reinforced concrete pipe, because the large contractors are still being supplied by the vendors. It's the small folks that are not. And we saw no other way to do it other than change pipe specs. So
okay, how many bids do you anticipate getting?
So far, we've had 2 packages picked up by contractors.
Oh, okay.
And I had a request yesterday for a third, and I'm hoping I've got a 4th that's going to be requesting a packet.
Okay.
Councilwoman McPherson.
Yeah, so Bobby, I really appreciate how much effort you've put in on getting this thing done and trying to resolve it, because it's been going on for a while. And I also appreciate the question as far as cost, because I was going to ask that, because I'm thinking sometimes the old school way is the best way, but it never hurts for us sometime to see if something else, right? It causes us to innovate, and that's how we find out really good stuff, when we innovate. And other times we find out that it wasn't such a good idea, but we won't know if we don't try. So it just kills me right now when I hear what you're saying, though, because so much of what's going on, it's hurting everybody to a degree, but it is killing small business. And you said the small guys, that's who's getting hammered more than anyone else. I was listening to Matt Wyndham on the radio this morning with the Water Authority and what they're going to be charging. That impacts us. So I needed to be listening, because we buy water from them. But copper pipe, stuff like that they're doing. So everything's going up because it costs a lot more to do it. So this will get done one way or another, but we have to put it out there because it's a whole different job from what it was before, right? The bidding.
Well, no, the job basically is the same. The only difference is the material spec.
Materials.
Yes.
And what's involved in doing that, because the other one's harder or whatever.
The issue is, if you've got concrete in your bid spec, well, these contractors, they look at reinforced concrete, forget it, we're not interested, we can't get it, we're not going to bid on it.
Yeah, okay.
And that's why we scramble to change, and hopefully we can get more interest. And I've kept Flowers in the loop on where we are.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And they're, the Mike Wester with Flowers, I met with him about 3 weeks ago, and we were talking about supply chain issues, and he said, in 35 years running this bakery, I have never had an issue getting bags for bread, to put bread in.
Yeah.
They're having a really hard time getting the bags, and it's everywhere.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Well, so before, the contractor was going to supply the concrete pipe, and now this time we're going to buy the pipe and we're going to give it to them?
When we started this whole thing, Mr. Barber and I, we met with the design engineer and we said, okay, let's just go ahead and order the concrete pipe and the end treatments. City, go ahead and order it, get a jump on it.
City was going to order it and pay for it.
City was going to order
have
it
it on hand.
The fastest delivery time that we had was 30 weeks,
Okay,
and we're ready to bid the project.
right.
And then we got to thinking, well, maybe we'll get some large contractors that will bid on this that have better resources getting the material than the smaller guys have. Well, as we got closer to the original bid opening within a week, we didn't see anybody else picking up any packets. So then we decided to postpone it and change specs on it.
So the 41,000, we're actually still going to buy the pipe, but we're going to buy
Yes.
this new pipe.
That is correct.
Okay.
Go ahead, Councilwoman.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, that the bid, I'm formulating it in my head. The bid is being delayed because the specs have changed. Even though we're buying the material, it could still cost the contractor, whoever that may be, a different amount of money to put in this new product versus the reinforced concrete. So that's why we need to delay the bid. We're delaying the bid and hoping to get more interest out of it.
That is correct, but any change to the original bid packet
Right.
requires an addendum to be issued.
Agree.
And in this particular case, we needed an extra 30 days,
Okay.
and that's why we did it.
Okay, because I understand that, especially small contractors, they have to work their schedules and they don't know if they can fit it in or not. And when you have a lead time of like 6 months or something, and you're not even sure you're going to get it then, you don't know if you're going to have the staff or whatever at that time. So I understand what you're saying. I was just trying to articulate it in a clear manner.
As Mr. Barber has nicknamed me, Negative Nelly, what scares me more than anything, just because contractors have paid $100 for a bid packet doesn't mean they're going to bid on it.
Right.
You know, and I don't want to be standing up here talking to y'all and like, you know, we didn't get a bid on the Flowers Culvert project. So what do we do now?
Right.
You know, I'm just hoping and praying that we can get some, you know, some qualifying bids in.
All right. Any objection to placing this as consent? Is that 8?
None.
No? Okay. Thank you, Bobby. Final plat for Gold Point. You had that one too, sir?
Yes, sir. The developer's here, by the way, Mr. Jeff Camp. When Mr. Camp came to us with an idea to do this, this project corners up at White Street and North Dogwood. The final plat's on the screen. We got to talking with staff, and you know, we didn't want a bunch of driveways down North Dogwood, you know, with mailboxes and all that. So we took a chance and got outside our development regulations, and Mr. Camp agreed to put in a couple of private alleyways with the garages in the back where the houses front both North Dogwood and White Street to make it a lot better looking, a lot less cluttered up with all the driveways. The layout of this plat is exactly the same as the preliminary plat, with one exception. We had issues with the sidewalk along North Dogwood, especially from the Point Parkway private alleyway down to and past Magnolia Street. There's a group of 4 large red oak trees that are right there that we did everything in our power to save, and we did. But putting that sidewalk up on the shoulder on North Dogwood from Magnolia to the first alleyway, it was going to gouge into the roots of those trees. And my luck with that is not very good. So we came up with the idea to put the sidewalk in the way it is. It ties in at Magnolia, and it runs along the front of those houses in a drainage easement till it comes back out at the first Point Parkway, and then it'll continue around down North Dogwood and down White Street to satisfy the sidewalk requirement.
And Bobby, so the area to the, I mean, in between the lot building line and the sidewalk, and who is responsible for maintaining that?
Well, the builders and all will put the sidewalk in, but that sidewalk will be on a public easement. At some point in the future, if repair needs to be made, we'll have to make it. We'd be in the city.
What about the grass or landscaping on the between the building line on Dogwood and the sidewalk itself, though?
That the builders will take care of that when they build the homes.
Right, but I'm talking about future maintenance, though.
No, if it's not on that easement, then the city's not responsible.
So the homeowner will have to make sure they're going
Yes.
across the sidewalk to, okay. And will this development have any kind of HOA or anything?
Yes, it has an HOA. The covenants have already been recorded.
Okay.
And I would have given them to y'all. They're 66 pages, and I got them after the agenda deadline.
Okay.
And I didn't want to,
Okay. Any objection to making this consent 9? Or any questions? I'm sorry, I should ask
Well, one
questions
more thing.
first.
We've got maintenance bonds have been posted.
Okay.
Everything is in order. Final plat's been reviewed. It's in compliance.
Okay.
So,
Any-
yeah.
There's no public hearing involved in this, is it?
Not in the final plat, I don't believe.
Yeah, just real quick, and I apologize that I missed part of that. What did you say you had to do as far as fitting briefly, the sidewalk and the problem with the trees?
If you
You
have
had to move it
You may have
further
to
out.
turn around to look at the screen.
Yeah, because.
Tracy, you don't have a pointer, do you? Do you have a pointer? You don't have a pointer. Find lot down toward the bottom. Find lot 11, 12, and 13.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's 4 huge red oak trees just behind the right of way on those lots. And if we were to put that sidewalk, require that sidewalk from there in the shoulder up north to the Point Parkway, cutting out for that sidewalk was going to gouge into the roots of those trees, and we didn't want. We tried our best to save them. Will it work?
Yeah, you don't have to do the whole thing again.
But as you can
You had to
see,
move
we
it
kind
forward.
of had to get creative with the sidewalk, down from lot 8 down to 14. It still complies with the city code as far as, the frontage. But that's how we had to do that.
Bobby, and real quick question. So with all the effort that we made, though, to preserve those trees, is there anything that keeps the homeowner from taking the trees down?
Currently, there's not, but we're working on something.
Okay.
It would cost a lot of money.
Right. Well, I mean, besides that,
Right
and
now,
obviously, if there's
right now, you probably couldn't get a contractor to come cut them anyway. So
Sure, okay.
We're fighting that battle right now. So
okay. Do you want to take this one over?
No, go
Bill?
ahead and finish it.
All right. Any more questions or any objection to making this consent 9?
None.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's move on to E4. Considerations on adding speed humps as traffic calming devices on Cleghorn Street and South Dogwood Street. This is also Bobby.
I'd like to table this.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about it. What did you say?
I'd like to table this because one of the councilwomen who's quite concerned with this and has a road on it is not here today, so she can't even articulate her need or how she feels about it or anything.
Okay,
Because at this point, we're only looking at 2 different roads, and one of them is in her ward.
so, any reason not to table this?
no, sir.
Okay.
I knew you'd be
Anybody else?
disappointed.
Okay, all right, then I'm good. Let's table this over to the next council meeting.
Geez, I was all set too.
I know.
All right, let's go to F, which is utilities. Number 1, lift station supervisory control and data acquisition. That's the SCADA upgrade. Eric.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Morning. Go ahead.
So this is the third set of lift stations that we're going to upgrade the SCADA on. As of right now, the first set is completed. The second set, as we speak today, is being installed at the lift stations. The SCADA upgrade is a priority and will continue allowing staff to communicate with SCADA 24/7. Staff recommends engaging with Xyle Technology on this.
Okay, is there any questions for Eric? That was really quick. All right, Mr.
One
Carter.
quick question. Okay, we've already done a first set of 6.
First
What-
set, yes.
What did we pay for the first set of 6?
First set was 46,000 around.
So
I'm sorry. The first set was 51,000, and the second set was 46,000 because it was less.
So we've done 2 sets so far.
That is correct.
So we're somewhere between those two. Okay.
Yep. And now we're on. This is the request for the third set.
All right.
Okay, any other questions? All right, any objections to making this C10 consent number 10? Okay, so Eric, I'm gonna ask you to pause for a second, and then I'm gonna ask Jennifer to come up. I'm gonna let you take up your items because these guys are running out of battery to run these cameras, and I want your items to be on there in case we lose any. So you're gonna talk about the defined benefit plan update, and then I'm hoping we get into the fiscal year 2022 budget amendments as well. So let's start with G1, defined benefit plan update.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, almost.
Close.
Yes.
5 more minutes.
The city manager had asked that I just present just a brief overview of our defined benefit retirement plan. The plan is affiliated with the Georgia Municipal Employee Benefit System, which you will hear the acronym GMEBS. So we'll just kind of jump into it really quickly. The retirement eligibility for the city, the normal retirement is 65 years with 5 years of service. There's no service requirement for the city manager position. Early retirement currently is 55 with 10 years of service. The accrued benefit is reduced for each year prior to the normal retirement age. And then there is a disability eligibility with no service requirements, no less than 20% of previous 12 months earnings, and of course it must be approved by Social Security for disability. Then a small disclaimer down there is that elected officials are immediately eligible, and y'all are entitled to $14 per month for each year of service after reaching normal retirement age. Pretty rich deal there.
Sounds exciting.
The next is the benefit calculation. It's based on credited service as well as your final average earnings, or FAE as the acronym. And that is your average 5 highest paid consecutive years, and it does not have to be, which normally it is, but it doesn't have to be your last 5 years. Again, the normal retirement is 65 with 5 years of service. There's a 1.5 benefit multiplier up to the dynamic break point, and then after that there's it's 2% on the remaining final average earnings. And of course Social Security is the one who determines what that dynamic break point is, and as of fiscal year 21 it was just under $89,000. For early retirement, again, it's 55 with 10 years of service. Reduced benefits based on a sliding scale, with an example of if you retire at 55, then you would receive 80% of your normal retirement benefit. The next slide is the current participant data. Right now, or as of the last actuarial report, there were 60 retirees and there were 12 beneficiaries. And the total monthly benefits totaled $34,442. Then the next slide. This is the participant data regarding active. There's 155 active participants that are participating and making a contribution to the plan, as well as the city making its annual contribution to the plan. The average age is 44.5 years. The average years of service is 6.7 years, and the average payroll is just over $48,000. Next slide, please. As I said, the employees, I'm sorry, we do not contribute. This is fully contributed on this by the city. And we make monthly contributions based upon a report we receive from GMEBS, an actuarial report, which is where a lot of this data came from. They look at our population, our demographics, the health of the plan, the interest rate, and they do all of their actuarial studies to come back to tell us how much we need to contribute to the plan for it to be sustainable, to continue to be healthy, and to meet certain targets that they set for each of the plans or each of the retirement plans within the larger plan. As you can see here, annual contributions have increased. They're usually associated with the percentage of payroll. In 2020, we had 363,000 contributed. 2021, 470,000. 2022, 531,000. And this upcoming budget, it went up just a little bit to 542,000. And you can see we hover around anywhere between just under 8% of payroll. Next slide, please. Last slide. The plan status. So you probably ask, well, how are we doing? As a plan, as Villerica's plan, even though we're in a larger plan with all other participating municipalities, does Villerica's plan, how is it doing or performing? Just to let you know, on the left, the plan meets both the recommended and state minimum target contributions. You can see the recommended contribution is what the city has primarily done in the past, which is always more than what the state code requires. And the reason that the recommended contribution is more than the minimum is the second bullet point over there is GMEBS has a funding policy, and it establishes a target level of 125 to 150% of an ongoing plan basis for mature plans. So where I have circled there the ongoing basis for Villerica's plan, you can see for plan year 2021, we were at 93.44%. And in 2022, we bumped up to 109.36%. So we're moving in the right direction. They state that a prudent funding objective exceeds 100%, which we do, but their target is to get us closer to the 125 to 150. The value of our plan, without getting too technical because I get confused myself even talking to the actuarials, the market value of our plan as of January 1st of this year was $8.7 million, and the actuarial value was $7.6 million. So that's just an overall view of the plan, just to give you assurance that the plan is healthy, we're moving in the right direction. And even though we're seeing all the fluctuations in the market right now, part of the actuarial study and calculations they do, they actually smooth out so that you do not see two things. You don't see dramatic values of your plan go up and down, but you also don't see that your contribution goes way up one year because the market did really bad, or it goes down because the market did really well. They take an average interest rate and how the plan is going to or the market's going to perform, and they smooth that out so that it does add stability to the overall plan and your contribution.
Okay. All right, council, does anybody have any? Mr. Carter.
How many retirees do we have under this plan?
Right now, the active retirees are 60, and there's 12 beneficiaries.
I'm sorry, repeat.
60 retirees and 12 beneficiaries.
Okay.
You can have a spousal benefit.
You
can have a spousal pension benefit.
The retiree is the employee. The
Correct.
beneficiary is when it's not the employee, but someone. All right, Ms. McPherson.
It's true that this is not offered that many places anymore, is it? Probably an outdated plan. I will just say that this, sometimes if it's not watched very carefully, is the thing that's gotten numerous cities and states, not just California, in trouble because they can't continue to pay their retirees. I watched it in Florida, how much they had to change theirs because of who was pay, right? The other people that are working have to pay for who's retiring, and it became unsustainable. So it had to be, and that 5-year highest, I'll just mention that I haven't seen this in the private sector because they would have a reason to avoid it, but in the public sector, I've seen the games that can be played sometimes with getting the highest 5 years paid, even where special favors are done to move people into a different job for a year or two before retirement in order to help that retirement, not necessarily always good to the benefit of the system that they're working in. And so anyway, I know we may be looking at this going forward, but I appreciate the details and the information, the graphs. It really helps understand it better. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so that was just for informational purposes only. Let me get you to go ahead and move to G2 and go over these fiscal year 22 budget amendments, numbers 293 through 298.
Sure. These are pretty easy. Some of them we've actually talked about today. The first one being the prep work and the mural on the outside wall of the Hickstown Brewing Company. Again, we're using product development funds that we receive from hotel motel taxes. So the prep work is estimated at $16,609, and the artist is estimated around $18,000. So we are just bringing before y'all $34,609 of product development funds to pay for this expenditure. The next one is also self-funded. Our senior center manager was contacted by Three Rivers, and they had some federal grant funds that they wanted to be able to pass through to us in order to buy the senior center a new refrigerator. So this is money coming in from them, $4,359. It's a reimbursement, so we'll pay for the refrigerator, and then we'll get the grant proceeds once we show them that we paid for the refrigerator. The last item is just additional funding for building maintenance. As you know, I believe it was the last meeting, we had an agreement with Southeast Trends for rental. They're paying now $1,000 a month through the end of the year. And so $3,000 of that is in this fiscal year. And Nick had to do a pretty large repair over there that he wasn't anticipating using his budget funds to do. So I said, well, let me see what I can do. Let's put the $3,000 that we were not anticipating in getting in rental income, and let's put that back in your department so that it would help at least offset some of the cost. So again, it's revenue, it's not fund balance, it's just additional revenue that's coming in.
Okay, thank you. All right, are there any questions? All right, Mr. Carter.
I did have a question. It was going to be about the mural thing, because I knew we hadn't voted on that package, and I was wondering why you were moving budget around for something we hadn't done until the 13th hour edition of item number B8. So now we know what that's about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, is there any objection to making this consent number 11?
None.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. All right, Eric, we'll let you come back up. And we'll start there at F2, Thermal Process Systems Service Proposal.
This is to engage with the thermal process to remote monitor our ATED system at the West Wastewater Treatment Plant. This will help tremendously with the operations and also the chemical usage at the plant. I believe that this could potentially pay for itself within a year with the chemical cut. We are also noticing too, where drastically it's harder and harder to find vendors that can supply the chemicals we need for our equipment. And having them monitor our system will dramatically cut the chemical cost and reliance on constantly calling for more and more chemical. So it'll be great beneficial to the operation of the plant.
Yeah, that sounds right. Okay, does anybody have any questions for Eric? All right, if there are no questions, is there any objection to making this consent number 12?
Which item was this?
This is F2, Thermal Process Systems.
Okay.
Yeah, just
All right, Ms. McPherson.
although I'm gonna hold you to your words that it'll pay for itself, because that was the only one of all your items that I didn't do an automatic check off because it was an emergency, it wasn't budgeted, but it sounds like from what you're saying, it will pay for itself within a year.
Yes, I believe so. Like I said, with the chemical usage and how much pricing is going up, they've already given us some pointers over the phone of better ways to operate the system, and that already has dramatically helped with chemical usage. So I believe with them monitoring on a 24/7 basis, it should absolutely cut them off.
Right, thanks.
Okay. So I've made that consent number 12. Let's move to F3, request for ratification for the repair of Weatherstone Lift Station. John,
Good afternoon.
go ahead.
This first item is for the ratification of the Weatherstone Lift Station. We experienced an emergency repair that was needed for Weatherstone Lift Station in terms of some very corroded suction lines down inside the wet well. We actually had to pull and remove all the lift station components and take them off-site for repair and recoding. The plan is actually to complete the reinstall this afternoon or by tomorrow. We reached out to 2 vendors. Only one vendor provided us a quote in any timely manner, and that was Alabama Motor and Pump Service, who we've done quite a bit of work with them lately. They've been extremely responsive, very good to work with. So we felt comfortable with their quote that they provided us. They came in and pulled the mechanics about a week and a half ago and are completing the install. Like I said, they started the reinstall today and hope to be done by tomorrow. In the interim, we're using temporary power through a generator and pump to maintain the station. We've been doing that for the last week plus, but we expect to have it done and complete, like I said, in the next day or so.
Okay. And this is a purchase that's already been made because it was an emergency. So we're just ratifying this here today. But I can't remember, you said you'd been using Alabama Motor and Pump a good bit lately, but I don't remember seeing them.
Yeah, it's amps.
Okay.
Yes, amps, yes.
All right. That's okay. All right. Is there any questions? All right. If there are no questions, is there any objection to making this C13?
No.
Consent number 13. All right. Thank you, John, on that one. Let's move to F4, implementation of computerized maintenance management system, CMMS. Go ahead.
Well, staff realized the need to deploy a managed maintenance program for all of the assets within the utilities, that being the water and wastewater both, as well as distribution collections. So we started doing a count of the number of assets. And for example, the lift stations alone, we think we've identified about 480 assets that we can implement with the system. And then we factor into 3 treatment facilities, distribution system, hydrants, things like that. We're easily over 2,000, 2,400, I would think, is where we're going to land, somewhere in that neighborhood. So what we looked for is a software program that we can utilize to manage all the maintenance of these and help improve the reliability of those assets. We reached out to a couple vendors that we know have a strong background in utilities operations, Brightly Software and Maximo. Now obviously, looking at the 2 quotes, they're really not even close in comparison. The reason for that is because while Maximo provides utilities software, they also provide a wealth of other options that we would never fully utilize. They are strong in other industries as well, but their program is far more reaching than what we would ever implement here. Brightly Software is more appropriate to a city and utility of our size. The implementation plus year 1 cost is rolled into year 1 cost for Maximo at $113,000. Where Brightly Software, the implementation in year 1 cost is $27,000. So the large portion of that is the implementation cost, of course. That's where we're seeing the biggest difference in cost. But looking at it in 3 years, of course, it's $100,000 difference. But again, Brightly Software provides us all we need and is buildable, what we can build out in the future. Some of the key components it has is the work order system that we can develop and issue out to our teams in all 3 departments. It's got a great tracking system, and our end mission here is really, so we have one of our team members of any of our 3 departments go to a site, say a lift station or a booster pump station on the water system. They can open up the software on the mobile device. They can look at the work order. We'll have the owner's manuals on the system. They can pull up the owner's manuals. They can see what work is needed relative to hours of operation or after 6 weeks or after 9 weeks, however we want to format that. They'll be able to pull up the owner's manual, look at the maintenance sheet, identify the products that need to be replaced, whether it's checking the tightness of an impeller on a pump or volute or the gear oil or motor oil. They can perform all that. They can input their work back into this work order system, complete the work order. We have tracking methods of who's doing that work, the frequency of that work being done. Also has a great preventative maintenance program where each week or each day, it'll provide us the work that's needed for that day or that week. So we can stay ahead of all of this maintenance and ideally, of course, reduce the amount of breakdown repairs that we've been having to do. So we're really confident that will be beneficial to us. It also has a GIS system where we can have all of the stations, hydrants, booster pump stations on the mapping system, where we can just click on it and see what needs to be done. So I think it'll help with our efficiency a little bit there. Also has a inventory management system. So if we have one of our wastewater team members go to a site, utilize, say, a gallon of gear oil and 3 relays, that can be tracked back to our inventory that we have in a managed system. And we can identify what our current inventory is and place orders appropriately. So
it makes me wonder how you were doing this without the system, the way you've explained this thing.
We weren't.
Number one. Well, that's what I was afraid of. I just didn't know you wanted to say it out loud. So, I see that you only have 2 bids on here, and you made a really good case for why you would choose Brightly.
Mm-hmm.
Did there happen to be a third option?
We didn't receive a third bid. We
receive
received
one.
Yes, and from your package, you'll see Brightly sent us quite a large packet of material.
Mm-hmm.
Maximo sent us a 1-pager, which has a few numbers, an Excel spreadsheet. And so I've had conversations with Maximo. It's actually part of IBM, but we really hadn't gotten any more good traction from them. Our general thought in talking to Eric is that we're probably not the right size for Maximo. I know Eric used them in the past at a city of over 100,000. You see them more prevalent in larger cities with different industries that they're managing. Brightly has the utilities, also has a facilities maintenance piece, and again, it's buildable. So in the future, we could always build that out. But we really like the work order system. We like the tracking system. We like the preventative maintenance and getting into predictive maintenance when it comes to some of our motors and energy use. I think it'd be beneficial.
All right, very good. Okay, any questions?
Mm-mm.
All right, there are no questions. Is there any objection to making this consent number 14?
None.
You did really good on that, John. That's probably the most detail I've gotten out of any of these types of
Thank you.
items coming before us. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay, let's go down to H1. Wait a minute. Do I have something for Chris?
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to do this one. Sorry, you got it under Tom. All right, H1, resolution of support for the city's application for the Georgia Initiative for Community Housing, the GICH program. Chris, go ahead.
Good afternoon,
Now it
Mayor and
is.
City Council. This is a repeat of an initiative that we started last year with it's a combination between the University of Georgia and the State Department of Community Affairs. They run the GIC program, Georgia Initiative for Community Housing. We were narrowly not selected last year. We actually were tied with another jurisdiction being selected, and we're told that because that other jurisdiction had applied the prior year, then they went ahead and selected them and encouraged us to reapply this year. So this is what this initiative is for before you. It's a resolution of support for our application, and we've already been through it once, so we know what to expect, and hopefully we'll put our best foot forward and be selected for participation this year.
All right. Council, do you have any questions? All right, Ms. McCoy.
Is there an in-kind or matching component to this?
This is not a grant program.
Okay.
This is a certification program that the city goes through. Takes about 2 years, and the benefits of it are that once we complete the program, we have annual access to community development block grant funds, CDBG, which is currently every 2 years. It gives developers who are building affordable housing developments, low-income housing tax credits. It gives them extra credit towards their LIHTC applications, and also it gives us extra points in certain affordable housing grant programs that we apply for.
Okay.
So it's good for the city.
All right. Anybody else? Mr. Carter.
Well, it was the same question that
Oh.
Anna was going to ask, but this means that Villerica will not have to put forth money on this. Is that what it means?
That's correct. This is not
Okay.
a grant program.
All right, anybody? Ms. McPherson.
Just to thank you. I know you've put in, I've watched the presentations when we were at the library, despite the internet issues or whatever we had.
Yeah.
But I know they praised a lot of that whole presentation, what was put together, and everybody you drew together from Karen Handel with Carol Tomorrow and all those to be involved in supporting this. So thank you.
All right, very good. So what we're looking for here is to approve this resolution of support. And so is there any objection to making this consent number 15? All right, so thank you, Chris. Okay, so we've reached the end of the agenda. Are we still on? Okay, well, we held out. I'm going to go over the consent agenda, and then I'll entertain any objections, and then we'll move on to public comment. So what I have for consent number 1 is the mayoral reappointment of Nancy Stoltz Jeffers to the Cemetery Commission for a term beginning 6/1/22 through 6/30/2025. Consent number 2, adoption of the new schedule of fees for city cemeteries. Consent number 3, development agreement with Villerica Townhomes, Georgia LLC. Consent number 4, development agreement with Fuquay Acquisitions 2, Inc. Consent number 5, amendment to community development fee schedule. Consent number 6, Hickstown Brewery EFS wall repair. Consent number 7, auction of non-running / retired vehicles and small equipment on govdeals.com. Consent number 8, Flowers Bakery culvert material purchase. Consent number 9, final plat of Gold Point at Dogwood. Consent number 10, lift station supervisory control and data acquisition SCADA upgrade. Consent number 11, the fiscal year 2022 budget amendments numbers 293 through 298. Consent number 12, thermal process systems service proposal. Consent number 13, request for ratification for the repair of Weatherstone lift station. Consent number 14, implementation of computerized maintenance management system, CMMS. And consent number 15, the resolution of support for the city's application for the Georgia Initiative for Community Housing, GICH program. Are there any objections, or did anybody hear anything different? Okay, if not, Madam Clerk, that'll be the consent agenda. And now I will move on to public comment. Did anyone sign up for public comment? All right, no one signed up for public comment. Is there anyone here who would like to make public comment? All right, I don't have my little statement here, so just behave. Give us your name and address for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
Michael Young, 9634 Coastal Point Drive, Mirror Lake, Villerica. My comment is about consent number 4, development agreement with Fuquay Acquisitions. The plat in Civic Clerk is different than the conceptual plans that were presented. The conceptual plan showed Fuquay putting in the Mirror Lake connector from Shoreline Punkintown to a traffic circle on Cleghorn. Now it doesn't even reach Cleghorn. What happened to the traffic circle?
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else here who would like to speak in public comment? All right. Mr. Mansour?
You have to behave yourself.
I have to behave too.
Applies to everybody.
Good afternoon. So I'm Michael Mansour, 101 Main Street, Villerica, Georgia. That's where I feel like I live. Anyway, I just want to talk real quick and thank Tracy and his crew for all the work they did building our course out on the field out there where we use for our applicants to try to run through the fitness course. It's the same exact course that we have in at the academy, and so new officers have to be able to pass that before they go to the academy. So we've had 3 people attempt it, we've had 1 pass and 2 fail. Knowing that, we saved a lot of money and time by not having to drive them down there and then them fail and we bring them back and make it work. So it's been a great asset for us, so I just want to let them know how much we appreciate it.
Very good. Tracy even here? There he is. All right, there you go. You can get the kudos. All right, is there anybody else here who'd like to speak in public comment? All right, if not, I'll close the public comment portion of the meeting, and I'll ask Tom to maybe answer that question that you heard from Mr. What's his name?
Young. The roundabout will be part of the Cleghorn Anderson upgrade. So it's in the design that BM&K is working on for that road.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else have anything to add before we adjourn?
Just a clarification on what you just said. So does that mean they're doing the traffic circle, we're doing the traffic circle? They are still.
They're designing it, but it's still, it's our project.
All right. David, you got anything?
I do not.
All right. Anything else, Tom? Okay. You all have anything? Okay. Well, then